Hello, Happy New Year. Welcome to 2024 and a new set of Tullie Textiles sessions. Now, as many of you will know, Tullie House is closed at the moment for renovation works, but that doesn't make a huge difference to us at Tullie Textiles because we're online anyway. The sessions will continue as normal, so I'll have my video released in the morning like this, and in the afternoon we'll have our Zoom session. So for anyone who's new to Tullie Textiles is a monthly group, usually the second Sunday of the month, and we meet online and have a chat about all things textiles, have a look at an object from the museum collections, and we have a go at a textile technique or activity. So what I thought we'd have a go at this month is making macrame leaves. So it's a really nice simple thing to do, don't need any fancy material, and it shouldn't take you too long. So as I mentioned before, obviously I've got this video going out this morning, unless you're not watching it as it goes out, in which case it could be any time. But if you are watching it when it first launches, then this afternoon we have our Zoom session. And if you'd like to join that, then the details are on my Facebook page, Delicate Stitches, and you'd be very, very welcome to join us. So, macrame leaves. Let's start off by having a quick look at what we're going to need. You're going to need some form of string. Now, what really works best for this is cotton string. So this is just like normal parcel string that you can get from a hardware shop or the supermarket or anywhere like that. And this is great. And one of the things that's really good about it is it frays really easily. And that's really going to help when we come to making our leafy shape. If you haven't got that, you can use yarn. Again, try and choose something that will fray quite nicely, and try and choose something that isn't too stretchy. The other good thing about string is because it's cotton, it's quite stable. It's got a bit of body to it. You don't want anything too floppy. And the other thing you don't want is you don't want anything too slinky. These knots have got to kind of have a bit of grip to them to stay on the base. So something like cotton string is really good because it's got a bit of grip. So that's the main thing you're going to need. You're going to need something to attach your macrame to. I'm using split rings, like key rings, but you could use curtain rings, you could use a safety pin, you could use another piece of string. It doesn't really matter, but you will need something to work on. I've decided to add a wooden bead to mine, so you might want a bead if you have one handy, but you don't need that. Masking tape is useful, and scissors are essential. Right, so let's get started. What we're going to need to start off with is our ring, or whatever you're doing your macrame onto, your string, scissors, and masking tape if you're using it. This isn't essential, but it does make things a bit easier. What we're basically going to do is we're going to have two threads coming down the middle. You can see them here, and all the other threads are going to be built onto that. So we're going to start by cutting a piece of our string about 40 centimetres long, there or thereabouts. Don't worry too much, and if you can, definitely cut it longer rather than shorter because it'll make life lots easier. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it in half so that I've got a loop of string like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a lark's head knot, and that's the knot that we're going to be using throughout this session. So to do that, basically all I'm doing is placing my ring on top of my folded bit of string, and then I'm tucking the cut ends through the loop like that, which will give me my lark's head knot. Now I kind of prefer the look of it from the other side, so I'm going to swing it over, and I'm just going to try and remove it because I'm using a split ring. It obviously, as the name suggests, has a split in it. And I just want to move this onto the smooth bit because I've chosen a yarn that frays really nicely. It doesn't want to slide on. There we go. So there I've got my little lark's head knot. So I'll just show you that again so that you can see that again. So I've got my piece of yarn about 40 centimetres folded in half, and what I'm going to do is feed the loop through the ring and then feed the ends, the two cut ends of the yarn, through the loop end of the yarn, through the folded bit, to make my lark's head knot, like that. And then I'm going to have this nice and central in front of me because this is what I'm going to be working on. And what I'm going to do is just use a bit of masking tape just to help hold that steady. If you're doing this on a safety pin, what you could do is pin the safety pin to your jeans or whatever you're wearing, as long as you're not wearing bare legs, obviously, and you can wear that. So you just want something that gives you a bit of resistance because we're going to be working along here. We're going to make all our fringy bits along here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to cut lots of shorter lengths to make these bits. And I'm going to do mine about 20 centimetres, which to be honest is quite a bit longer than I'm going to need them, but it's a little bit easier to work with longer pieces than it is shorter pieces. So I've just found a nice knot in my yarn, so we'll just see if I can undo that. Right, I can't do it easily, so I'm going to cheat for the moment and just cut it out for now. I will use that scrap for something else, don't worry. And depending on how thick your string or your yarn is, will depend on how many of these bits of string you need, but you're going to need probably between maybe 25 and 40. You don't have to cut them all at once. I've totally lost count as I've been chatting doing this, so I'm going to cut a load to start with, and then if I need more, I can cut more. So they're about 20 centimetres. It's very rough. I haven't been overly careful about measuring these because they're all going to get a good trim at the end, so it doesn't really matter too much. I think I'm going to need more than that, but that's what we'll start with. And what we're going to do is we're going to continue making lark's head knots, same as we did to attach this to the ring, on alternating sides rather. So I'm folding my piece of string in half, I'm popping it underneath my working threads, so my two long pieces, and again I'm going to fold those ends through the loop, the folded end of the yarn, to give me a nice little knot that sits like that. And if I show you this close up, you can see that's the little bump of the lark's head knot, and you can see how they're alternating. Now, the easiest way to remember which way to do it, you can either try and remember, well, last time I went that way, so this time I need to go this way, or if you do it the same way as the last piece that you did is lying, it will fold the right way. This will make sense, I promise. So I've got one lark's head knot on here. I'm putting my folded piece of yarn underneath my leader threads, tucking the ends through the folded end to make my lark's head going the other way. Now I want to make one that goes the same way as my first one. So again, I can either remember that it needs to go that way, or I can look at the last one that I made and do it that way, because what we're doing is folding it over the leader threads, these two threads hanging down. Then we can just do it that way. So I'm going to do another one, and I want it to go the opposite way, so I'm laying it down the same way as the one I've just done. And what you want to try and do is pull these really nice and tightly, and after you've made each one, squidge it up. It's really tempting to do them well spaced out so that you get down the row really quickly, but it is better if you can take a little bit of time and just squidge them up. It'll make your finished keyring or whatever you're making much, much sturdier. Now, if you forget and you do one the wrong way by accident, so I want to do one that's lying this way, but I've just put one on that's lying this way, don't worry, just don't pull it all the way up, and instead pop another one in between that is going to lie the way that you want it, like so. There we go. And then you can push it up and balance is restored. So what we're doing is we're taking our bits of cut yarn and we're folding them in half and making lark's head knots, alternating one side than the other. And what we're going to do is we're going to go down as long as we want the leaf to be. So I'm going to crack on with that for a minute, and then I'll show you the next step. Now, I've probably done this in a bit of a silly order really. I probably should have told you to make your template first, but it doesn't really matter. Once you've got your knots, the length that you want your keyring to be, you need to make yourself a little template to make your leaf. You can just cut freeform, but it's really, really difficult. It's much, much easier with a template. The easiest way to make a template is to take your bit of scrap paper, fold it in half, and just cut half a leaf shape. Don't worry about getting it really accurate. This isn't kind of going to be something that translates exactly. We're going for vaguely leaf shaped rather than exactly leaf shaped. So that one's a little bit big, but actually the one that I made before is about right. So I'm gonna go with that. You can trim to your heart's desire. And what you want to do is make sure that all of your ends are lying nice and flat. Camera didn't like that very much, did it? Never mind. And then you're going to place your template on top with the centre line where you folded it to make it running along your two long thread lines, and you're going to use this as a guide to trim these edges. So you want nice sharp scissors for this, and just take your time. Don't worry about getting it absolutely exact, it's just to give the impression, but do take your time with it. Okay, that's one side done. Let's do the other one. You can always take more off, you can always trim more off, but if you cut it too short, very, very difficult to stick it back on again. There we go. So if I take that off, I should have kind of a nice vaguely leaf shaped bit of macrame. So I can just get rid of those ends or use them for stuffing or whatever. And to finish off, what we're going to do is we're going to fray all these edges, which is what gives it this lovely kind of fluffy effect, like so. Now, I've seen people do it with combs. I find it easiest to do it with something like a pin. So if you just hold that steady as you go and just use a pin, and just kind of drag it along those thread ends, what it will do is they'll start to separate, and it takes a little bit of time. You might have to be a little bit patient, but if you just work your way along, they will start to separate nicely and kind of fluff up and give you that really nice full texture, like so. So you can see that's starting to go. This is quite a good yarn for fraying. It unravels quite easily, which is quite annoying in some circumstances, but for this, it's just what we want. And you can spend a bit of time doing that, getting it exactly as you want. And if you notice there are some edges that are a bit more skew than you want them to be, you can then just go back in with your scissors and just tidy those up, like so. But remember to stop. It's easy to get carried away with this bit. And then the finishing touch is I'm going to add a little bead. So I think I'm going to struggle. This has got quite a rough edge, this bead, so I think I'm going to need something to help it go through. Now there's no chance that I'm going to get both of those ends through this needle at once. So all I'm going to do is thread the two long ends, the two ends that we built our knots round. I'm going to thread those through the bead. So obviously any bead that you choose needs to be big enough to accommodate two strands of yarn. You can see how well this frays. Part of it has undone already. I wonder if I can just persuade those edges in like this. Highly technical way of doing this here. Don't think it's going to work for me, but we'll try. Oh, no, there we go. So I've got both of my ends threaded through the bead, and this is more for decoration than anything. I just think it adds a nice little touch. And to secure the bead, I'm just going to knot it in place with a nice double overhand, a nice big knot, and that'll just stop the bead sliding off, and it'll just help hold that macrame in place. And then you can peel off your masking tape. You might want to trim this a little bit, and again, same technique as before, you can fray the edges, make them nice and fluffy, and then you've got your keyring, like so. Can of course do other shapes, you don't have to do leaves, you could do long thin ones and do like feathers. Simple shapes are always going to work best, you're not going to get very accurate shapes, but it's a nice technique to play with. So as always, have fun, let me know how you get on, and if you've got any suggestions of sessions you'd like to see in the future, do let me know. Do feel free to send me pictures of how you get on. I always like to hear whether you've enjoyed the sessions. But other than that, have a lovely January, and I look forward to seeing you in February.